Domini Sumus Retreat Leaders. You know who I am, and I'm here to talk to you. Unfortunately, I have students taking tests this morning, or else I would have come to your meeting to share with you a little bit about testimonies, which I believe is what you're talking about today with Miss B. So many of you know this, some of you don't. I did 2 years of mission work. One of those years was with a program called NET Ministries. NET stands for National Evangelization Teams. And what they do in groups of 8 to 10 young people, or 8 to 12 young people, they travel around the country and put on retreats for teenagers, 6th through 12th grade, around the whole country. And it's a ton of fun. If you ever want to do a mission year, they're a great one to look into. Miss B's husband and myself both served with NET for a year, different years, so I didn't get to meet him while we were on the road or during our mission year. But part of the training for NET in August and September is to go through learning how to do particular things, lead retreats, and one of those things is to give a testimony. The word testimony comes from the same root word as martyr. To give witness is really what martyr means, right? To give some sort of epic witness like the martyrs do in shedding their own blood, but to a witness to what you truly believe. So at the heart of this, at the heart of what we're going to talk about is how has God worked in your life? And I think some of us, we start to talk about testimonies and you might think, I don't have anything to share, Miss Ginther. Like, Miss B, I don't know what you want from me because God hasn't really moved in a mind-blowing way in my life and nobody's going to care. That's not true, first of all. God has written your story, you and him together. He's pieced it together, knit it so intricately. And the ways he's moved in your life, he has something to tell and to give to other people by you witnessing to him how he's worked in your life. So how does a testimony work? There's 3 basic parts. I'm going to tell you the basic parts, and then I'm just going to share a little bit of one of the many testimonies from my own life. Each of us has numerous testimonies to give, right? Each and every single day of our lives, we should be able to give a testimony at the end of each day, right? Here's what my day was, here's what God did, and here's how he's calling me closer to himself. So the 3 parts of a testimony, you have the setting, what's going on in your life, who are you encountering, maybe what are some of the general struggles that you have, your conversion point, and the fruit. So after this conversion point, what's life like? A couple things before I share with you my testimony. If you look down at your sheet of paper, what you're going to see is you actually start by picking the conversion point. What's that moment? Okay, maybe just take a moment now to think, Lord, what is it that you want me to share with my peers on this retreat? What's that moment that God worked in your life that he wants you to share from? Maybe it's a moment, the moment of all moments in your life that God has called you closer to himself. Maybe it's the moment where God showed you how to pray more deeply. Maybe it's a moment where he convicted you of your dignity and of your worth and of your value. Maybe it's a moment where he showed you what joy really is and taught you what it means to be a joyful Christian. Maybe it's a moment where he helped you to recognize that your desire is good and he called you deeper to himself through the desires of your own heart. So pick that moment first and foremost. When did God move? From there, you're actually going to take a step back and you're going to look at the setting of your life. So when we talk about this, when we walk through the setting of our lives, generally speaking, we're going to have some sort of negative thing that we're going to turn away from, and the fruit will point to that. So for lots of us, when we turn away from something, it's going to be some sort of life of sin or some sort of failing to acknowledge of truth. So for lots of us, maybe it was, I was living in a particular way, doing this with my friends, believing this lie about myself, whatever it might be. What's the setting? There's a couple things we want to avoid when we're giving testimonies. So we don't want to give too much detail, especially if the nature of the setting of my life is very difficult. I want to acknowledge the difficulty I've had, but I don't want to give too much credence to that difficulty and glorify that difficulty, particularly if that difficulty is a sin. So for instance, if you struggle with promiscuity with someone and you had a conversion that led you to breaking up with that someone and living a pure life, you don't want to give too much glory to the relationship or whatever type of promiscuity you might have been having with this person that changed after that conversion point. So don't give too many details. Don't glorify sin. Don't make excuses or blame others. This isn't the blame game and this is your story, so own up to it. Here's what I did. I might not be proud of it, but this was the life I was living. A couple do's as you give your testimony. So be concise, own up to your mistakes, okay? This is what I was doing, and That's life. Like, here's the struggle I had. Name it and move on. Establish an overall example. So what's the thread that's going to be running through? Maybe what part of this is going to be changed here? And as you come to this fruit, like, what is going to be the common kind of overarching thread? What's the thing, the fruit that changed? And then you're going to talk about your conversion point. This should be a specific moment or a couple of days or whatever it might be, but try to encapsulate it within a particular kind of, here's the thing that happened that made me change. Whether it's over a series of a month, I really started to pray and understand God's love for me and my worth in Him and because of Him. Right? Though that might have been over a month, I said it in a particular, concise way. For some of you, it's going to be an exact point. I was in adoration and God did this, right? So that's your conversion point. What were the circumstances that caused you to go into this? What was the central issue that caused you to say yes and to surrender to the Lord? So there was something you were struggling with. What caused you to kind of concede to Him and give to Him? The last one, so this should take about a minute. And the last one, your fruit. This is if you're giving this in a 3-minute testimony format. It certainly can be longer. Your fruit. So a picture of just a snapshot of your life post that conversion point. So this is what the setting was. Here's my conversion point. What does it look like now? How has life changed? So maintain a balance between the truth that Jesus touches you in our lives and really interacts with us and really changes us. But don't overemphasize like, hey, I'm perfect now, because we all know that leads us to failure, right? If I paint a picture that Jesus came and now nothing's wrong, let's be honest, that's just false. So really painting a picture of what has changed, but being honest and authentic that life isn't perfect, though it's much better than hopefully it was. Use phrases that help to process the idea and maintain this balance. So from that day, I began this, or from that day, God showed me this. Ending with a strong conclusion. So maybe give a short summary, show how God, what He actually did. God helped me to understand forgiveness on this day, or whatever it might be. And then moving on from there, usually it's good to give a charge. What are you calling them to do? Because every time we hear the gospel message, every time we hear the good news, we should be conscious of, Lord, where am I going? So here's a very quick, concise, not even 3-minute testimony example. So my name's Melissa Ginther. This would be an example of how to do this. My name is Melissa Ginther. I'm a military kid from Millbrook, Alabama. Traveled all over the country. I love sports growing up, and I want to share with you about my life and how God worked in a particular way to call me out of idolizing sports into really worshiping Him. So from a very young age, I love sports. I was a basketball player, a softball player, and my junior year of high school, heading into my senior year, I was actually given a softball scholarship. But at the same time, in my life, as I was kind of walking the fence and straddling, I love Jesus, but yet I'm like captain of the softball team and I have a scholarship in this athlete and church kid life, I had to go on a retreat, because that was the requirement of our church to get confirmed, was to go on a retreat every year, all 4 years of high school. So I went on a retreat. It was actually a net retreat with tons of young people who were excited and just on fire about their faith. And in the midst of that retreat, God really started to convict my heart through one of the speakers, as she started to talk about that we can't have a soul that's divided. We can't have a soul that's one way on Sunday and another way the rest of the week. And so in the midst of her kind of witness to us, God really convicted my heart and spoke to my heart in profound ways. That night we had confession and adoration, and to be honest, confession was, it was just kind of confession. But during adoration, as we were sitting before the Blessed Sacrament, God really kind of pierced through the darkness of my own life and made known to me that He was close and that He wanted me to be close to Him. From that night moving forward, God continued to place that call within my life, that He desired me and He desired me to be close to Him, and that He longed for me to be a witness to Him and to not live this duplicitous lifestyle. So though life was still difficult after, though I still had to figure out that balance between sports and between church, and how to be a Christian athlete, how to be first Christ and then an athlete to the world and to give witness to Him elsewhere. It was a challenge, but it stayed with me and it stuck with me. And even to this day, I remember that moment when God called me closer to Himself and told me in a very real and intimate and intricate way that He desired me to be close to Him and to journey with Him. And though it's not easy, though I'm not perfect at it yet, I would challenge you to do the same, to look at your own life and see, Lord, where am I keeping you at an arm's distance? Where am I saying, I don't really want you that close? And maybe invite the Lord into that this weekend. Invite the Lord into that place so that He can encounter you and call you closer to Himself, so that as you go forth from here, you can walk more closely with Christ than you've ever walked before.